Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. In Afghanistan, at least 8 people have been killed in a suicide attack on the governor of Eastern Laghman province. Interior Ministry spokesman Tariq Aryan said the governor and 28 others were injured in the attack. The governor's spokesman said Rahmatullah Yarmal was targeted when he was on his way to office. Azerbaijan says Armenian forces have launched missiles in the Mingashever city during fighting over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Azerbaijan's Foreign Affairs Chief Hikmet Aliyev has accused Armenia of state terrorism for intentionally targeting civilians. Meanwhile, Armenian army has rejected Azeri claims of capturing a number of villages in the Artsakh region. The United Nations has expressed concern over the continuing cases of sexual violence against women and girls in India. In a statement, the United Nations said the subcaste Hindus are extremely vulnerable and are at greater risk of gender-based violence in India. The coronavirus cases, Delhi has surpassed 35 million, while the virus has claimed over 1 million lives worldwide. US President Donald Trump remains under observation in a military hospital after making a brief public appearance to greet supporters. Meanwhile, India has registered over 900 deaths and nearly 75,000 cases overnight, taking the infection tally to over 6.6 million. Here in Pakistan, the virus has claimed 4 more lives overnight, taking the death toll to 6,517. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We start from Afghanistan, where at least 8 people have been killed in a suicide attack on the governor of Eastern Laghman province. Interior Ministry spokesman Tariq Aryan said the governor and 28 others were injured in the attack. Aryan said 4 guards of the governor and 4 civilians were among those killed. The governor's spokesman said Rahmatullah Yarmal was targeted when he was on his way to office. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. Meanwhile, the Taliban said 6 Afghan policemen were killed in a mine explosion in the Nausaraj district of the Helmand province. The group spokesperson Qari Ahmadi said the blast was occurred when the Afghan forces attacked the Taliban belt in Mukhtar Kala area. Now, Azerbaijan says Armenian forces have launched missiles in the Mingashever city during fighting over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Azerbaijan's Foreign Affairs Chief Hikmet Aliyev has accused Armenia of state terrorism for intentionally targeting civilians. Meanwhile, Armenian army has rejected Azeri claims of capturing a number of villages in the Artsakh region. Earlier, Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev said Armenia must set a timetable to withdraw from the Nagorno-Karabakh region. He said Azerbaijan has one objective, and that is the liberation of its territories. Over 200 people have been killed and hundreds others wounded since the start of the battle 9 days ago. The United Nations has expressed concern over the continuing cases of sexual violence against women and girls in India. In a statement, the UN said subcaste Hindus are extremely vulnerable and are at greater risk of gender-based violence in India. It said the recent cases of alleged rape and murder in Hathras and Balampur area are another reminder of the atrocities on women in the country. The United Nations said it is essential that the BJP government ensures the perpetrators are brought to justice speedily. It also stressed that families of subcaste Hindus should also be empowered to seek timely justice, social support, counselling, healthcare and rehabilitation. Now, at least 2 Indian troops have been killed in an attack in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Officials say 3 others were injured in the Pulwama attack. In a statement, officials said a contingent of Indian paramilitary Central Reserve Police Force came under the attack in Pampore area. They said the injured troops were shifted to hospital, where two of them later succumbed to their injuries. The official said the area has been sealed off immediately after the attack and a search operation has been launched. Now, the AllParty's Hurriyat conference says the plight of Kashmiri political prisoners in occupied valley is not different from victims of the Nazi concentration camps. In a statement, a spokesman said Kashmiris are implicated in fabricated cases and subjected to third-degree torture in custody. The APHC also slammed the recent killings of 3 labourers from the Rajouri area in a fake encounter in Shopian district. The spokesman said the exhumation of labourers by the Indian authorities should serve as an eye-opener for the global community. Earlier, hundreds participated in funeral prayers of victims before they were laid to rest in their hometown in Rajouri. Meanwhile, India's opposition leader Rahul Gandhi held a tractor rally in Punjab to protest the newly passed farm bills. Last month, the Indian Parliament passed 2 of the 3 reform bills, triggering widespread protests across the country. Punjab Chief Minister Amrinder Singh also participated in the protest. Gandhi and Singh led the 3,000 tractor rally from Punjab's Moga district to Jatpura, meeting with farmers on the way. The Congress leader will hold the rallies for 3 days in several districts of the state. Gandhi strongly condemned the farm laws in wake of the coronavirus pandemic.
What was the need to implement these farm laws amid COVID-19? If you had to implement, you should have discussed in the upper and lower house of Indian Parliament. Prime Minister says the laws are being framed for farmers. If that's the case, why didn't you discuss openly in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha? And if farmers are happy with these laws, then why are they protesting across the nation?
Now, 2 rockets have fallen near Baghdad's heavily fortified Green Zone, which houses diplomatic missions in Iraq. In a statement, Iraq's armed forces said no one was killed or seriously wounded in the attack. It said one of the 2 Katyusha missiles landed near the Babylon Hotel, which is frequently used for government meetings. Earlier, the Iraqi authorities detained several individuals involved in missile attacks on Baghdad airport and the Green Zone. The United States has also threatened to shut down its embassy in Baghdad if the attacks continue. Russia says it's ready to sell its advanced anti-ballistic missile defense system S-400 to Iran. Russian ambassador to Iran, Levon Zagaryan, said Moscow can deliver the S-400 system to Tehran once the UN embargo expires. Zagaryan said Moscow has sold the S-300 system to Tehran in the past, and now it has no problem with the delivery of its upgraded model. He said Moscow does not fear Washington's threats against the sale of weapons to Iran. He added Moscow can also consider other proposals from Iran on arms purchases. Moscow delivered the S-300 to Tehran after the signing of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal that restricted its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Moving on, Turkish President Obama has reaffirmed Ankara's support for the UN-recognized Government of National Accord in Libya. Libyan Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj, along with a high-level delegation, met President Erdogan and other officials in Istanbul. In a statement, the Turkish presidency said Erdogan affirmed Ankara's support to Libya's only legitimate government of Fayez Sarraj. It said foreign ministers, defense ministers and finance ministers of the 2 countries also participated in the meeting. Earlier, President Erdogan publicly announced his opposition to Prime Minister Sarraj's resignation as Libya's Prime Minister. Now, Syria says Russia's continued military presence in the country is important to counter the West's influence in the region. In an interview, President Bashar al-Assad said Moscow's naval and air bases in the region have played a key role in battling insurgents. Assad said Moscow believes that military intervention in Syria, the country's forces were facing a dangerous situation. He said the armed opposition against his regime was directly backed by Washington and other Western powers. Moscow controls the Maymim air base and the Tartus naval facility in Syria, which is Russia's only naval foothold in the Mediterranean. Now, in Sudan, protesters have shut the seaport terminal and a road connecting Port Sudan city of the capital Khartoum. Demonstrators are demanding cancellation of the recent Juba peace agreement with the rebel groups. The Port Sudan Workers' Union said the deal represents foreign agenda and does not address the concerns of the locals. The head of the union threatened that demonstrations will grow if the pact is not cancelled. The Sudanese government signed the peace deal with Sudan Revolutionary Front, an alliance of the 9 armed groups in the country. African Union Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat has welcomed the deal among Sudanese factions to end the armed conflicts. Meanwhile, in Belarus, police have arrested around 200 protesters overnight during the ongoing protests demanding President Alexander Lukashenko's resignation. Interior Ministry spokeswoman Olga defended the detention, saying violations of law and order will not be accepted. Earlier, thousands of people took to the streets in Minsk for the 8th straight weekend. Security forces used water cannon to disperse the crowds. Protesters also demanded the swift release of political prisoners. The crowd marched to the beat of drums towards detention centers where detainees were held. Unrest in Belarus was triggered by August's presidential election believed to have been rigged in favor of Lukashenko. The South Pacific archipelago of New Caledonia has voted against independence from France for the second time in as many years. As per a provisional count, the no vote won over 53% of the votes cast, a narrower margin of victory than in the 2018 poll. A surprise yes vote would have deprived Paris of a foothold in the region where China is expanding its influence. The result will bring relief to President Emmanuel Macron's government. In a statement, Macron said he welcomed the result with a profound feeling of gratitude. New Caledonia became a French colony in 1853. Tensions have long run deep between pro-independence indigenous Kanaks and the descendants of the colonial settlers who remain loyal to Paris. Now, 2 established parties are set to dominate Kyrgyzstan's parliament after Sunday's election, but it remains unclear if they could form a grand coalition after a series of internal rifts plagued the previous ruling alliance. As per Kyrgyzstan's election authority, Birim-Dik party of President Sooronbay Jeenbekov's closest supporters led the count with 24.45% votes. It was followed by the Makanim Kyrgyzstan party with 23.95% votes. Just 4 out of 16 parties contesting 120 seats in the parliament appeared to have crossed the 7% barrier for election. The country of 6.5 million people has been a history of political turmoil. In the past 15 years, 2 presidents have been toppled by revolts and a third is in prison after falling out with his successor. Now, coronavirus continues to spread across the world, surprising 35 million cases and more than 1.03 million deaths. More on the virus in this report.
Hopes of a global economic revival are dimming as COVID-19 surges in India, Latin America, Indonesia, major countries in the Western Europe and the US. New York City has announced new restrictions after emergence of coronavirus clusters. President Trump still remains under observation in a military hospital after making a brief public appearance to greet supporters.
We're getting great reports from the doctors. This is an incredible hospital, Walter Reed. The work they do is just absolutely amazing, and I want to thank them all, the nurses, the doctors, everybody here. I've also gotten to meet some of the soldiers and the first responders, and what a group.
Many European nations have reimposed lockdowns and other restrictions in the worst affected regions. France, Belgium and the Netherlands have recently recorded highest daily cases. However, New Zealand has announced to lift all coronavirus restrictions, claiming the country has defeated the second wave of the disease.
So, on the basis of the success and effectiveness of our elimination strategy, and on the advice of the Director General of Health, Cabinet has confirmed that Auckland will join the rest of New Zealand at Alert Level 1 from 11:59 p.m. this Wednesday, the 7th of October.
Meanwhile, India is driving COVID-19 numbers in Asia, with the infections tally passing 6.6 million, the second highest in the world. The Indian Health Ministry has registered over 900 deaths and nearly 75,000 cases overnight.
Now, despite long-standing hostility, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has wished his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump fast and complete recovery from COVID-19. In a briefing, Maduro expressed hope that the U.S. president will become humane and empathetic towards other nations after recovery. Maduro said President Trump wrongfully underestimated the use of the mask and the pandemic in general. Earlier, the Venezuelan president said he, along with his family, will participate in third phase of clinical trials of Russian vaccine against the coronavirus. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 4 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,517. The Health Ministry says 644 more tested positive overnight. It said there are 8,907 total active cases in the country. The ministry said out of over 315,000 detected cases, more than 299,000 have recovered so far. It said over 138,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while over 99,000 reported in Punjab so far. The National Command and Operations Centre says 88 people across the country are on ventilators. More news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now moving on with the news stories. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas says the COVID-19 pandemic has made the post-Brexit deal more urgent. Maas said failing to reach a deal will be irresponsible. Speaking after a meeting with the EU's chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier, Heiko Maas said people on both sides have enough to shoulder. Maas said it will be irresponsible to burden them in this position with additional problems through a no deal.
There are currently a lot of open questions, and if we want to make it to the finish line, we must make quick progress in all of these open questions. A lot has happened in the past year, and it must be said that maybe more is at stake today than 1 year ago. The coronavirus pandemic made the discussions even more difficult, and I mean in every respect, but it also made an agreement even more urgent.
Now, 8 migrants have drowned while 12 are missing near the Horn of African nation, Djibouti. The International Organization for Migration said the smugglers forced the refugees off a boat. In a statement, the IOM said the remaining 14 migrants survived and are receiving medical care. The UN's migrant agency said the migrants were aiming to reach Saudi Arabia. It said all were thought to be Ethiopian and making the passage to Djibouti from Yemen to seek work in the Gulf nations. Now, Britain says it will introduce new legislation to toughen up the asylum system in the biggest overhaul in decades. In a speech, Interior Minister Priti Patel said the country's asylum system has fundamentally broken down. The minister said she will introduce a new firm and fair system. Patel said they will welcome people coming through safe and legal routes and stop those arriving illegally. She said they will address the moral and legal problems after decades of inaction by successive governments. Earlier, a leaked document said the government is considering putting floating barriers in the English Channel to stop asylum seekers. Now, in China's most beautiful high-speed railway line, bullet trains are running at full capacity to meet the demand during the ongoing National Day holiday travel rush. China's National Day and Mid-Autumn Day overlap this year, leading to a combined 8-day holiday which started on the 1st of October. Details in this report.
Bullet trains operating along China's high-speed railway spans 852 kilometers in east of the country's Anhui, Yangtze, and Fujian provinces. These trains are running at a designed speed of 300 kilometers per hour, shortening travel time between the two provinces to within 4 hours. More people are traveling on the route to enjoy the pleasant autumn weather by visiting picturesque landscapes and ancient towns. China's Railway Corporation said a total of 11.4 million passenger trips were made on Saturday alone. By 2019, China had the world's largest high-speed railway network, with the length totaling over 35,000 kilometers. Over 2,800 pairs of bullet trains run daily, connecting over 550 cities in China and covering 33 of the country's 34 provinces. The Beijing-Shanghai high-speed train links the two mega-cities, located 1,318 kilometers apart in just for 4.5 hours.
Now, a French brand has pushed the boat for its latest fashion show in Paris. The brand hosted its catwalk display on the banks of the Seine River at dusk. Details in this report.
Seine River welcomed the guests in boats to enjoy a glamorous show on its banks. Launched by designer Alexander Mathieusi, 10-year-old fashion label AMI's latest looks were flaunted by some regular Parisian models. Guests looked on from a barge surrounded by Paris's romantic bridges where passers-by stopped to watch. TUC says it was not an easy task to manage the collection while the majority of people were working from home.
I really love this collection because it has been made during the lockdown. You know, I've been working at the office, at the studio by myself. All my teams were working at home, so we were working very slowly because in the same time the manufacturers and the suppliers were you know, working half-time too. So it was a long process of, you know, making choices and trying to guide everyone in the right direction, and we just try to make it like very light, very poetic, and very easy.
The brand is one of a reduced numbers presenting collections with physical events this season. Some labels opted for digital displays and videos for the Paris Fashion Week. But the designer says it feels good to join people over something while the pandemic shakes the world.
We need to celebrate a little bit, and I think when you have this kind of crisis, you need to, because it's very easy to fall into a kind of depression, you know. So I feel like there is a kind of challenge and responsibility to look up and to look at the light and maybe to participate at this kind of, you know, beginning again.
The collection was the first major women's wear for the brand, which first erupted on the scene with men's clothing. The collection included long dresses, suit ensembles, shorts and pencil skirts, while several models wore ruffled pastel dresses with a Pior-style collar.
Now, European stocks have advanced as jittery global markets calmed down by reports of President Trump's improving health from COVID-19. The pan-European stock 600 has gained over 0.5%, with oil and gas stocks, banks and autos all adding over 1.5%. All sectors and major bourses are in positive territory. London's FTSE 100 and Frankfurt's DAX have risen over 0.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris and Italy's FTSE MIB has also advanced close to 1%. Earlier Asian markets traded high as well. The EU Statistics Office says China's economy has been the first to bounce back amid sluggish global growth after the pandemic. In its latest figures, Eurostat said this uptick in Chinese economy has boosted the confidence of German businesses. It said China has become the European Union's largest trading partner in the first 7 months of this year. The managing director of a German company, Hans Ernst, said China has taken important steps against the pandemic. He said the company's production lines were closed, but the Chinese plant quickly resumed working. Bilateral trade between China and the European Union touched $385 billion in the first 7 months of this year. In the English Premier League, Tottenham Hotspur beat Manchester United 6-1 in a one-sided contest at Old Trafford. United's defence was destroyed by the London side as both Son Heung-min and Harry Kane scored 2 goals each. Bruno Fernandes opened the scoring for the home side inside first 2 minutes, but Spurs responded with 4 quick goals in the first half to make the scoreline 4-1. Earlier, Arsenal beat Sheffield United by 2-1 to move up to the 4th position. The Wolves also returned to winning ways as they condemned Fulham to a 4th straight Premier League defeat. In another match, West Ham United handed Leicester City their first defeat of the season. The Hammers picked up where they left off against the Wolves last weekend as they thrashed Leicester 3-0. In the Spanish La Liga, Real Madrid beat struggling Levante 2-0 in an away fixture. Madrid are on top of the table and have yet to taste defeat this season. Vinicius Jr. opened the scoring for Real, netting goals in the consecutive La Liga games for the first time. Karim Benzema then scored his first goal of the season in injury time to seal the game for Madrid. In another fixture, 10-men Alaves beat Athletic Bilbao 1-0. Rodrigo Alé scored the only goal of the match, while Robin Duarte was sent off after getting a second yellow. And now let's look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news. Take care.